He was called the God Killer, and we first heard about him from the traders traveling the northern routes. His legend grew, but no one believed. Not in the beginning, except me. The Book of Bryn. Hello, Planeswalkers. Tyler here, and I'm bringing you a very special deck. See, to those who know me, I love a restrictive theme, and building around said restrictive theme when it comes to EDH decks. That's what this is, but the theme's a little outside of what I normally do. About, I'd say, half a year or so ago from when this video airs, my dad got me interested in a series of books by author Michael J. Sullivan. These books told the story of Elan, a world of myth and legends and magic. It's still grounded in enough believability that it didn't come across as overtly silly or overly whimsical. Mr. Sullivan has written several different series in this world, taking place at various different moments in Elan's history. And of those series, the 6 books of the Legends of the First Empire are chronologically the first, taking place 3,000 years or so prior to his first series, the Rhyria Revelations. But why am I telling you all this? Well, simply put, I've fallen in love with Mr. Sullivan's work, and the theory crafting and conversations I've had with my dad have been some of the most enjoyable moments in my recent memory. With those 2 reasons, along with finding out that my dad's birthday falls on mine and Andrew's upload schedule, I reached out to Mr. Sullivan and asked if he had any objections to me creating a Magic the Gathering EDH deck based on Legends of the First Empire for this YouTube channel as a birthday present to my dad. Much to my joy, he seemed very enthusiastic in granting me his blessing, and so I set to work. I decided to focus on the first trilogy of the series, Age of Myth, Age of Swords, and Age of War, both to try and limit spoiler information for anyone interested in reading themselves, and because, at time of writing and recording, the final book hasn't even been released yet. I'll be including links to where you can purchase these books for yourself in the bio of this video. And while I said I was going to keep spoilers to a minimum, there will be some spoilers as I have to explain why I chose certain cards to represent certain elements. With all that out of the way, let's get on with the deck. Oh, and by the way, happy birthday, Dad. You're the best. Now before launching into the deck, a quick overview of the 3 stories that we'll be covering. Age of Myth, Swords, and War tells the tale of the first major war between the Runes, or humans, and the Frey, or elves. The Frey are seen as these long-lived gods by the Runes until one day, one is eventually killed by Wraith of Dareia. His slaying of a Frey sparks a series of events that eventually culminate in the uniting of the 10 runic clans against the Frey. A battle once thought impossible, but with training and some tricks of their own, proves to be an attainable goal for the Runes. Now, the hardest part about crafting this list was finding a way to make these cards all work together in some cohesive manner so that the deck can still win. For that purpose, I focused on an aura/beatdown strategy and tried to blend a mix of aggro and control. For the first card, let's look at the deck's commander, the Child of Alara, a 6/6 trampler for the full Wooburg that nukes all non-land permanents when it dies. I chose the Alaran avatar as a stand-in for the Art, a magical force that permeates the world of Elan and allows some users, referred to as artists, to perform incredible feats of magic. Many of our spells fall in line with these abilities that the art has been able to do in the books, but we'll get to them later. As with any good story, we of course need our author, Mr. Sullivan himself. For him, we have who other than Chulainn, teller of tales. Like, come on, Michael tells tales, Chulainn tells tales. This is as close to a one-to-one as we can get without putting Michael himself into the game. But what's a story without a cast of characters? First, we have Wraith, a man raised in the poor village of Dareia, one of the 10 human clans. Brought up to be a warrior, yet always yearning for a more simple life, Wraith's stand-in is Gerard Capuchin, a noble hero whose tapping ability plays into Wraith's skills as a one-on-one fighter. Next to Wraith, we have Malcolm, his traveling companion, eventual best friend, and someone who holds a very deep air of mystery. For this, I went with Ravos Soultender. While maybe not a perfect representation of Malcolm, Ravos does hold his own mysteries, namely, how does he fly? He carries a staff, like Malcolm's pointed spear, and they both boost their friends. Our next character is Persephone, widow of the chieftain of Dalren, another of the 10 human clans, and eventually leader of the people of Elan. Her counterpart is Siona, captain of the Pyleas, as both serve as leaders and rally more people around them. She is also one of the defining playmakers in the deck strategy, being an aura payoff, mirroring Persephone's role in the story as well. Following Seth, we have her Keeper of Ways, Bryn, and her personal shield, or bodyguard, Moya. Bryn is a young, studious girl who eventually invents writing by studying old tablets, so for her, I chose the Scholar of the Ages. While Moya eventually becomes an incredibly skilled archer, so she's represented in Rashka the Slayer. However, our main cast isn't done yet. Continuing on with the other important villagers of Dalren, we took a look at Roan, a young, timid girl who has a knack for creating and inventing, and who eventually becomes an incredibly skilled blacksmith. Veteran Swordsmith is her card, as she boosts the power of soldiers by forging steel weapons in an almost identical method to Roan. Gifford comes next, and he's our first character represented by 2 cards, the Garenbrid Carver and the Resolute Rider. In the story, Gifford was born crippled with a twisted back and messed up legs, but he found his place as a master potter and craftsman, thus the Carver, and eventually saved all of humanity at the Battle of Granford, which we'll cover later, by riding through the Elven army, another thing we'll cover here in a bit, on a horse while wearing magical armor, thus the Rider. Tesh is our next character. The only other survivor of the destruction of Dorea, aside from Wraith, Tesh is a scrawny young man with dreams of being the greatest warrior in the world, and as such, I couldn't think of anyone better to portray him than Kithian, hero of Akros, who eventually becomes Gideon, battle-forged. Much like how Tesh goes from being an orphan boy on the verge of death to being the most skilled combatant in the entire Rune army. We've also got the village survivors, standing in for the population of Persephone's home of Dalren after the village is razed to the ground. The second character that we have represented by 2 cards is Suri, my personal favorite character in the entire book series. A young girl raised to be a mystic by the elderly Tura, who I'd also like to add is represented by the card Rattleclaw Mystic. Suri is the first human to be able to use and soon master the art. Academy Journey Mage represents a Suri that's still new to the use of magic and wanting to learn more, while Aether Adept stands in as an older Suri who has fully embraced her powers and abilities. Suri is also never seen without her sister, a large white wolf named Mina. Mina's stand-in is the Sacred Wolf, both due to the creature's white coat and the hexproof ability that makes it so only you can interact with the wisest wolf in the land, for better or for worse. Moving on from our human characters, we have our collection of important Frey, who appear as both the human and elven allies during the war. On the human side, we have Nifron, leader of the band of Frey known as the Galantians, who are the best warriors the Frey have to offer. Not happy with how their new Frey king, or Thane, is doing, they defected from Frey society and joined the humans to help rally them against their own kin. Representing Nifron is Azuri, renegade leader, since both are the heads of the warbands fighting against tyrannical powers. For the Galantians as a whole, we have Azuri's brigade, though I've also gone and given certain Galantians their own cards as well. Elvish Reclaimer stands in for Ares, both in being an elf and in wielding a spear. Elvish Berserker stands in for Sebek and his affinity to dual-wield swords. Tek Chin is represented by the Decorated Champion, as he sees himself as one of the best and strongest of the Galantians. And the only member of the giant race in the band, Grigor, is represented by Oathsworn Giant. Each of them are powerful targets for any of our auras, but we'll get to those later. Our final friendly Frey is Arian, an elf originally sent down to hunt Nifron, but who ends up joining his cause and training Suri in the ways of the art. For her, I chose the Kujar Seed Sculptor, whose ability to place a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control on her ETB can be seen akin to Arian's training. However, not all of our Frey are heroes. Wandelay is the prince of the Frey people and wants nothing more than to see his own clan, the Mirrorleaf, prosper and rule over all the world, including the other elven clans. For him, we have the Immaculate Magistrate, whose art and flavor texts speak for themselves. Following up the prince, we have the first Minister Grindel, another Mirrorleaf and the prince's biggest hero. Grindel also believes in Mirrorleaf supremacy, so for him we brought in Kethis the Hidden Hand, an elf who cares about legendary power and legendary power alone. While not necessarily a villain himself, our last Frey is Trylos, who fills a similar role in Frey society that Malcolm does for the runes, in that no one knows what he really is or where he came from, but he seems to know everything. For that, the only obvious choice was Arcanus the Omnipotent, who both lacks a creature race, much like how no one really knows what Trylos is, and whose title implies himself to be all-knowing, again, like Trylos. With all of our main human and elven characters, as well as a wolf, out of the way, let's wrap up our creatures with a couple dwarves, some monsters, and a tree. Magda, the oldest tree in the Crescent Forest, represents a very important turning point for Persephone and Suri, after the young mystic speaks to her and claims to have gotten a response. For her, we've brought in the Tree of Redemption, a hefty blocker that can help us if our life total gets a little too low. We also have the Dwarven brothers Frost and Flood, both represented as the Dwarven Vigilantes, and their adopted brother/friend, the Digger, Rain, represented by Dwarven Miner. They don't really do a ton to help with the rest of the deck, but I couldn't not include them, so here we are. Woe Strider comes in as a Rao, a hideous, lanky creature that lives in the shadows and eats faces. It's said that once a Rao is awakened from the pile of bones that they sleep on, they cannot sleep again until they add to the pile. Seeing as the Woe Strider lacks a face, as well as having the ability to eat things at instant speed, and can come back again and again from the grave, I think the flavor lines up. Our penultimate creature is Goreclaw, Terror of Kalsisma, our in-deck counterpart to the legendary Grin the Brown, a large, flesh-mad demon of a bear that stalks the Crescent Forest and kills anyone she comes across. The final creature that we're running is the Colonian Behemoth, a massive beast with shroud that can't be killed by traditional means. He represents Balgargareth, a massive goat-legged demon that plagues the ancient dwarven city of Neath, who also cannot be easily brought down. So there's our cast of characters, but a commander deck needs more than just bodies to function. Let's take a look at our spells, starting with our sorceries. Commander staples Cultivate, Kodama's Reach, and Farseek all make the inclusion, representing the use of the art to shape the very land, a feat capable of powerful art users. Fireball and Incendiary Command also make the cut, as Suri's most prevalent abilities, especially early on in her training, revolve around fire. Casualties of War represents the Battle of Granford, the first real confrontation between Frey and Runes, and its name speaks for itself. Our final sorcery is Single Combat, representing Wraith's one-on-one duel with Grindel at the end of Age of Myth. Moving on to instants, I tried to look over well-known cards for Commander staples to give the deck a fighting chance. We ended up with Lightning Bolt, representing a Frey attack on Arian and Persephone where lightning was called down to try and kill them. Counterspell, since the art has proven that it can be used to cancel out weaker spells. Clash of Wills for Arian's one-on-one duel with Grindel using the art before Wraith stepped in, and Eyeblight's Ending to represent how the Mirrorleaf see outsiders. Cryptic Command was brought in to reference Arian stating that incredibly skilled artists could multitask with the art. Titanic Brawl references Mina's eventual showdown with the demonic Balgargareth, and finally Crib Swap is a reference to the in-story legend of the little mischievous spirits called Crimbles stealing babies away to the land of Nog, a fate Suri believes befell her before she crawled her way out and was found by Tura. Our enchantment suite also managed to line up very powerful commander staples with key moments and abilities featured in the stories. Mirari's Wake once more pays reference to Arian stating her ability to multitask with spells, the Akroan War calls back into the Battle of Granford again, Battle Mastery is a stand-in for Tesh's training from the Galantians to master each of their fighting styles, Darksteel Mutation brings back Mirrorleaf supremacy by turning foes into something pathetic and small, and Ghostly Prison, as well as Sphere of Safety, both represent using the art to hold enemies at bay, seen both when Grindel holds the entire village of Dalren hostage, and how Arian holds back Balgargareth from entering their safe room deep in the dwarven city of Neath. Rhystic Study represents the Book of Bryn, the first recorded tome of history created by Bryn herself after she taught herself reading and writing. Leyline of Anticipation represents being able to access the art by literally plucking at what are referred to as the Chords of Creation, or ley lines. And finally, Privileged Position and Shielded by Faith, both stand-ins for the dwarven rooms known as the Orinfar, which are capable of cancelling out the art's influence.
Before we move on to our mana base, let's look at our artifacts. Door of Destinies is here to represent the Door, a mysterious doorway in the Frey capital said to seal away the first tree as well as the fruit of immortality. Bronze Sword makes an appearance to reference Wraith's Copper Sword, one of his last possessions left behind by his father after his death. Tatsumasa, the Dragon's Fang, is a reference to the act of creating a Galara brand, a massive dragon-like beast that serves almost as an avatar of the art itself. Galara brands made by Suri tended to use a sword with the engraving of the creature's true name on it, as a method of putting the beast to rest after its purpose was finished. Heartpiercer Bow represents Moya's personal bow named Audrey. Magebane Armor is a representation of Roan's steel armor engraved with the Orinfar runes, making them immune to attacks using the art. And finally, Herald's Horn is a counterpart to the Horn of Glendora, an artifact sacred to Frey culture as it is used to determine who will fight to become the new Thane. Given that the Horn cares about creature types, and we run a lot of elves, and the Horn in the book is a Frey artifact, things line up rather nicely. Now, let's run real quick through our mana base. Being 5 colors and trying to stay on theme was difficult, but I think I managed a pretty decent job at it. First, we have Command Tower, a near auto-include in any commander deck and our stand-in for the Frey Tower of Avampartha. Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds are both callbacks to the whole art redirecting land thing from earlier. Boros Garrison is Alon Rist, a Frey stronghold taken by Persephone and Nifron in the early days of the war. Azorius Chancery represents the Frey Aquila, a sacred council chamber where representatives of each Frey tribe debate and decide on aspects of Frey life. Battlefield Forge is a stand-in for Roan's Battlefield Smithy. Kessig Wolfrun represents the Crescent Forest surrounding Dalren and home to Grin the Brown. Ash Barrens represents Dorea and its piss-poor landscape and poor village. Overgrown Tomb is representing the Agave, a deep underground prison located within the city of Neath where Persephone and her band took on Balgargarith. Watery Grave represents Pyre, or rather the River to the Afterlife. Get it? River to the Afterlife? Watery Grave? Dead wet things? Haha. And the Tri-Lands of Jungle Shrine and Seaside Citadel both represent Dalren and Daltyre respectively. Daltyre being another village where Persephone takes her people after Ren is destroyed. Sunpetal Grove represents Suri's home of the Hawthorn Glen. Bountiful Promenade represents the elven capital of Estremnadon. Elfhame Palace represents the Elven Thane's Palace, of course. And the 10 guild gates represent all 10 runic clans. Top things off with 3 mountains, 3 swamps, 2 plains, 3 forests, and 2 islands, and we have the entirety of the world of Elan. I had a lot of fun making this deck. It's fun, it's flavorful, and a lot of it reminds me of the amazing world that Mr. Sullivan has crafted. I deeply implore you, check out his book series in either paper or on Audible. You won't regret it, and I'll be including links to where you can pick up these books for yourself in the description below. I just wanted to say, happy birthday, Dad. I hope you enjoyed this deck tech, and will maybe consider starting up a deck of your own. I'd be happy to teach you how to play. Anyways, thanks for tuning in, Planeswalkers. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and ring that little bell so you never miss an upload. Later.